So week 2. First, I want to start with a bit of show and tell. I would like to see what you all have built. So maybe I'll give the screen to 2 people today. Please feel free. Maybe Karan, since you had a lot to share on school, I would love to see what you have, and maybe one more person. You can go. Go ahead, Karan. You can share your screen.
Okay, I have my... something went wrong. I don't know. I tried to set up my screen sharing, but it doesn't seem to work.
Or you can send me the link and I can open it on mine. So, link
1 second. This one. Okay, maybe it works.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Is that like a real map? Can you like drag it?
Yeah, it's from Mapbox. So I mentioned already my limitation was that I have 50,000 free ones, and then you kind of have to pay. But I was able to integrate that very well into the app. And then what is that? Okay, I never used share screen in Google Meet, so I need to see what I'm doing here. What is going on? Does anyone know how I get out of this drawing thing? Stop annotating. Okay, I think that's it. I can't seem to...
You can stop sharing and start it again. Maybe it might reset.
Stop sharing. Oh, maybe I need to go here. Do you still see it?
I see your Lovable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I figured it out. Okay. Yeah, now it works. Okay, so I managed to add the playgrounds. I did that. They did like manual research to put them in. So I just got like a couple of areas, not like the whole of Berlin. And then when you click in it, so I changed the icon as well. When you hover on, I managed to put a card in that shows what it looks like with some information. And then if you click in it, also we have, you know, the heading, the picture, which isn't showing, and then this like nice color code index. And then I managed to make quite a nice, for the next 12 hours, like my own little component here. Try to copy the Apple thing, you know, the Apple weather vibe. And I liked also this emojis that it seems I feel like it's very clear also for the user what that means. And then another thing I changed because it showed me the pollutant levels here, and I thought that information is not so, I mean, I don't know if people care about that so much, but you're able to click on this button here and you can see more pollutant levels. I played around with changing the cards around, and yeah, I managed to do all of that in just with prompting. The main thing that I struggled with was to get these images to be related to playgrounds. So as you can see, it's like a wave or something. And even though I said in the prompt, please use Unsplash images with Berlin playgrounds kind of search term, I don't know, it just doesn't want to work. And it gave me some ideas, and then it said I should create like a local folder, and I even attached the pictures, but I'm kind of stuck on that one. But maybe I should use ChatGPT to figure out more, which I haven't done. So that's a good tip, to use ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, one part is yes, to use ChatGPT, and the other part is for you to know what exactly happens when you use images. Yeah, firstly, this looks amazing. Yeah, this looks really cool. Yeah, like images get served from 2 locations. One, it is stored inside your project as a local file, and that file is referenced in your application somewhere. So that's how some images show. So if you go into your code, on the top right, see if you can, on the right side, you have this toggle, next to scope, So you can see, go to data, up there, data. Okay, so these are just, no, not TS. If you just open all the folders below, see if you can see any images in the folder. See, okay, there you go. So you have images being retrieved from these Unsplash links, right? So what it's doing is through a URL, it's loading these images from Unsplash. So you can just copy one of those links and just open it and see if that link is broken. This is how you kind of, because you know where this thing is coming from. I think at the end there's one character that is extra. But yeah, I mean, paste.
Okay, you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is that these links that it's using, maybe, so the tool doesn't actually understand why it's breaking, because according to the tool, the images seem fine. But see, that's your image. That's why if you open the image, is this image?
Yeah, it's not the right image.
Exactly. So your issue was that it's pulling, like, according to Lovable, there was no issue because it was pulling this image, right?
Yeah.
It's just pulling the wrong image that you did not know. It was not pulling the right image that is meant for your application, basically. That was the issue. So it's good for you to know that images are either retrieved from a link like this or locally saved. That's
okay. That's perfect. That helps a lot, because now I can update the links to have the correct images.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you can go and ask in Lovable, hey, what are the links to the images? Can you show them to me? And then Lovable will print you all those links, and then you can open it and check it yourself as well, right? So it helps to understand what's happening behind the scenes, so you can ask questions accordingly when things go wrong. Yeah. Awesome, but really cool. Was the Mapbox integration easy?
Yeah, Lovable did it all. Yes, yeah, implement, plan, implement, and then it was done. Yeah, I mean, I had to create an account and stuff, so yeah, but it was all straightforward. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay, one more person, and then we'll start today's session. Who wants to go? Yeah, Sridaksha, go for it.
Hey.
Yes.
So I didn't dabble much with Lovable, but because I was not convinced with MVP, I was playing around with prompting, and I documented them in my notes, first of all. So I did a couple of rounds because I don't have pro plan either with Perplexity or Lovable. And what I did is also here. Then so I tried. The first thing I got last time was something like this, which was not exactly what I wanted. Up until here, it was something that I wanted, but I don't know why I'm not able to. Okay, something's wrong. Anyways, so this was not the one I wanted. And then there was an intermediary version. And then this is close to what I wanted. So I was happy with the MVP scope. I wanted to enter the flight date, when the flight is going to fly, and the destination. So it allows me to add destinations because one aircraft flies to multiple routes. And then it helped me to generate a theme and also give me some controls on how, but this is not working. So I plan to get the pro version and then try out a couple of things here. So, but this is where even I, as a designer, was not completely clear how I wanted it. So I went to Figma and then gave a couple of things on how I want the vision to be. I hope Lovable allows me to upload this prototype and kind of give it a direction how I want it to be. This is something I wanted to check with you, Ashwin, if it's allowed. But the simple idea is that I give certain inputs here and then it selects, and then I tell create a theme and it selects the destination. So for example, in Barcelona, it's autumn, and then in the in-flight entertainment screen, people can shop for autumn weather or something. And if they want to modify, I got inspired by Figma. We have this cursor chat. So something like that, where the product manager can point at and then give the input. I want this background to be much darker than what it is. And then they can add it to theme and they deploy it. And they can do a similar thing for another destination. So this is the vision I want, and I'm just getting started on Lovable now.
Okay, Shira, quick questions. So this is a theme generator for what? For like in-flight entertainment?
Yeah, in-flight entertainment screens. But this product is for airlines, and the product managers in airlines dabble with creating experiences for in-flight entertainment.
Mhm.
So the value is the more relatable the screen is, according to season or festivities or whatever, it increases the net promoter score for the airlines, and they can also promote relatable things to what
Right.
it is in the local place. So yeah, that's the idea.
Super cool. Yeah. So today we'll talk more about like how to style app. That's today's agenda. But yeah, for now, if you have a basic wireframe or something, just functional stuff, that's a good start, right? Today I'm going to show you like all different ways of styling. Okay. So in the interest of time, let me start. So we'll have more checkpoints. Okay. So first, today we're going to introduce you to Tailwind CSS. So Tailwind CSS is the framework with which your styling happens in your code, right? So a quick recap of what we had before. Let me something else. Yeah. So if you remember last time we spoke about this, we discussed what HTML, what CSS, and what JavaScript is. So you can see that this is a tool called CodePen, where you can just see this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in one view. It's just a simple tool. Like you never have to use this, but just for us to explain things. So as you can see on the left, you have your HTML. It looks like these div tags, paragraph tags, these image tags, and then each div tag has a class for identifying. And then this class is referenced in CSS. So you can see that profile section is tagged here. And there's some properties. The properties like make the text center aligned, make the margin, add a margin below. So this is a typical output of what you build. It gets compiled into an HTML file, a CSS file, and a JavaScript file. That's what's happening behind the scenes. Now, what Tailwind does is, Tailwind is kind of like this simpler version of doing the same thing, right? Let me switch my screen. Second. Yeah. So what Tailwind does is if you can see on the left, you have what's called as a CSS. This is how CSS is written, right? Like you have certain properties, and you can find a list of all the properties that you can provide there's a website where you can find. Go to mozzarella docs, and then you can find all of this Mozilla. So basically, you have background color, padding, border radius, and all of that, and you mark up an HTML, which is in this case a button. And when you apply all of these styles, you get this. The same thing, as you can see on the right, is written in Tailwind. So the advantage of Tailwind, I'll tell you exactly. One is the code, the way you write code itself. So here, as you can see, background color is given a very specific value, right? So it's hash 3b, whatever, and that's the blue color. But here you can use variables. You can use something like BG blue 500. So, and there's BG blue 100 to 900. So 100, 200, 300, 400, different shades of blue. Similarly, you have different shades of green, pink, all these colors. And all of them come pre-inbuilt inside Tailwind. So when you use BG blue 500, when you export your code, what it does is automatically converts this into CSS. So you don't interface with your application at the CSS level. Instead, you talk to your application at Tailwind level, but the application converts your Tailwind into CSS. That's what Tailwind does. So Tailwind is a framework to make styling easier through a set of words, basically. So BG blue 500 basically adds color to it. Text white basically makes the color of text white. PX stands for padding, X stands for x-axis, and 6 is there are different variables, like PX1 is a smaller value, PX2 is a bigger, slightly bigger, PX3 is slightly bigger. And out of the box, you get like standard PX values. So even your spacing is not manually written. So everywhere in your code, when you say PX4, it always uses the same spacing value, right? Here you specifically mention padding is 12 pixel. Here, instead of saying padding is 12 pixel, you say PX6, which is like 6 always corresponds to a certain value that you can configure in your application, right? So it keeps it's the same as the spacing variable in Figma. So when you use spacing SM, spacing XL, spacing LG on Figma, this is exactly what's happening. It's creating a variable and it's assigning a static value to it. So wherever you use, it uses the same value. So if you go into your configuration file and change the px6 to say 40 pixels, your entire application.
Your screen share.
Oh, shit. I want to. I don't know if anyone using Arc browser. It's super buggy these days. So, hold on. Let me share my whole screen then. Sorry about that. Yeah. So again, so when this is sort of like a simpler representation of CSS, and if you look at your application, let me open Lovable. You can check all your applications too, right? So you'll see that there are a couple of files that will show you that it's using Tailwind CSS. The one way to know that if your application is using Tailwind CSS is by looking here, and you'll see this tailwind config.ts, right? So this is your Tailwind configuration file. So here's where you could, configure what I just explained. You could configure px6 is 40 pixels, for example, or py is something else. So you could have all those configurations. And here you can see in this Lovable app, it came up with some configuration. So container always has a padding of 2 rem. The screen's 2XL corresponds to 1400 pixel. The border corresponds to this variable, like variable # border. So if you go see that # border will have a value right here. See? So if you go and you can see that it has a value right here. So it's referencing this value from your TS config file. And all of these are like the same as variables, exactly like your variables on Figma, where you have this window where you set up all the variables. This is exactly that file. This file just sets up all the variables for you. Again, you don't have to ever type this, but just understand that you could talk to your AI and say, adjust the variable for the spacing in my application level so that it's reflected everywhere, instead of saying, go just manually adjust the spacing in one particular card. Right? So you can talk to AI in its own language. So now you could understand that we have a spacing file here and everything can be standardized. So that's the main key takeaway here. So back to our Tailwind demo. So I want to show you like how we go from CSS to Tailwind, right? So first I can start with a simple markup. So let me delete the CSS. If I delete it, you can see absolutely no styling. Right? So, and I'm going to remove this also, and I'm going to put just the same thing, but without any classes, nothing. It's just simple, all the divs, and each div is kind of like a frame in Figma. So div is the same as a frame. It actually exactly is a frame. So this is a frame. In this frame, you have an image. So just imagine this is Figma's layers, but it's the text form of Figma layer. That's exactly what it is, right? So you have host name, you have static. Once you have this, what it does is, this is how typically a developer or even your AI is going to code. It's going to go find the right div. So let's say it finds this div, and then it'll go put class as something, right? So the moment you put it, you'll see like some changes. So what did it put? There are a lot of properties. You can go into Tailwind CSS to see what they exactly are, but you just have to understand that when you ask AI to make a specific styling, it goes and pastes things like this. And if you see, these properties are also very similar to how you have in Figma. So minimum height screen is basically how much screen height that it should take. Flex stands for auto layout on Figma. Flex box is what it's called in web. On Figma, it's called auto layout. So you're saying enable auto layout. You're saying center items here. You're saying center items in the vertical center. And then you're saying, I want a background of gray, So you're just like gradually adding properties exactly the same as on Figma, but you're not doing it manually, and AI is doing for you. So this is just, hold on. So as you can see, what we're doing is adding these properties within a class. So all of this are given as a class. Class is kind of like an identifier within a frame or a div. So you can refer to this div through a class in CSS, as you saw before, right? So within those these classes are reserved classes for Tailwind. So which means these classes you cannot, the moment you define it, Tailwind picks it up and it creates a styling out of it. So yeah, so you can gradually just keep adding different styling to it. And you'll see as I keep adding, the style will keep changing. So you can see the moment you did that, you can saw the soft shadow, and now it just entered the text. And then you have the image. And even within images, you can have certain Tailwind. So even within image, you can add a class. And then I'm just going to paste this. So you see that? Simply because this class, what it said was make it width of 24, height of 24, rounded full says make it all rounded. MX auto means make it in the margin auto in the horizontal x-axis. So it centers the whole thing. MB3 is basically adding a margin below of 3. So if I make it MB5, for example, you can see when it refreshes, the margin would have slightly increased. Or when I say 48 and 48, you can see, do you see that? So this is one way you can manually go in code and tweak it if you want. So completely optional. But because if you have very little things, you don't need to go and tell AI. If you know where this code is, just go and manually do it if you want. But it's not. See, for example, if I just change this to 800, and you can see the border color will automatically update to 800. So these are things. This is like the quick fixes, the little fixes, font sizes, all of those things you can play around like this, right? And yeah, the rest, the moment you put all the Tailwind classes, it becomes your UI. That's basically how it works. So the reason I'm saying this is because if you go look into your Lovable, you'll find this everywhere. So if I go into components, so in my, let me show you my app again so you know what I have here. So I have this movie title app, and when I say Godfather, and you can see like a simple rating system, right? So what I have is, if I go into code, I have this folder called components. And within components, I have this folder called UI. And within UI, I have all my design system components. So these are all your code base will have this. You'll have all these design systems like cards, carousels, charts, checkboxes. This is your actual design systems, but we get all of them out of the box on Lovable. So that's the cool thing, right? So if you see inside this design system, for example, I open checkbox, this should look familiar to you now, because what it does is it basically has your Tailwind CSS, right? You can ignore all the other code. That's a bit advanced. We're not going to go into that. We just want to know how to recognize what a Tailwind CSS code is. So if you know how to recognize a Tailwind CSS code, then you can either make modifications to it, or you can tell AI, look, just take this file and make modifications to this file. Yeah, Karan.
And is this Tailwind CSS code? Can we just find references to it on their website?
Yes, that's a great question. Tailwindcss.com. You can go. So yeah, if you go into the docs, you'll see all the docs over here, all the layout, isolation, float. See, if you read through, they'll give a very clear explanation. So utilities for controlling the wrapping of the content around an element. So floating elements to the right. So yeah, so basically you have different properties that treat your visuals, and you can just use them basically. See, float start, float end. This is for left to right alignment, right to left alignment. You would use this float start or float end in your class, basically. You have a lot. You have text transform that will just make the whole thing uppercase. Lowercase, if you just say lowercase, it just makes the whole text lowercase, even if you write. So for example, if you have an input field where people have to enter something, and it all has to, by default, be transformed into uppercase, you would use something like this. So you would automatically turn things into uppercase. Yeah, so you have like max width, min width. So max width 96. So if you can see, look at this. So you can see how the responsiveness is defined. So when max width is 96, this beyond 96 pixel, the width won't exceed. So if you have like card layouts, for example, and you want the card to reach a certain width and then stop growing after that, might be a great use case for Karan, your thing, right? Because you have your cards that expand full width, right? Now you say, I just want the card to be max width of 96, right? So you can go tell AI, hey, I want the cards to be a max width. And you can ask, let it come up with a suggestion. And then you can ask, okay, how much max width did you do? And then it'll say, maybe I did max width 96 or max width 80. So you can talk to your application and understand what Tailwind properties it picked. And then you can be like, hey, you picked 80, make it 96. Or you pick 96, make it 48. You could like actually do all of these changes with AI, but have the understanding that behind the scenes, this is what it's creating, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions so far? Until this point, is it clear? What we need to understand is why are we using Tailwind, and like how to make changes to Tailwind by asking AI. That's the key takeaway here, right? Okay, if no questions, let's keep going. So I'm going to talk about, okay, so this is something, it's a very debatable topic, but so far you've all been using Lovable. But is Lovable always the best solution is what I want to talk about here, right? So, sorry. Okay, so you have on one side, you have your Lovable, Bolt, and V0. On the other side, you have Cursor. So there are significant differences in terms of what you could do with each of these tools. So the biggest thing is that Lovable runs on your browser. Cursor runs on your system. That's the biggest difference. So if you have Figma, do you use Figma on the browser or do you use Figma on the system? You always have it on the system, right? Because it installs fonts better. There are certain things that it does better as an app that is not as optimum on the web. So there are pros and cons to each. So let's look at like the pros of Lovable, right? You have instant deployment. Like you have that button for just GitHub publishing that will quickly deploy it. It'll deploy it in Lovable servers. If you use Cursor, you have to use another tool for deployment, which is a slightly complicated thing. It's one more thing to know about, but it's not that hard in my opinion. It's perfect for rapid prototypes. It has these edit modes. There are no setup required. You can just start with a prompt and things are set up, right? The cons is the customization is limited. So you cannot do a lot of like advanced things on Lovable that you have on Cursor. So you can see that's why I put like a knife as an example for Lovable and a Swiss knife for Cursor, because you could do so many things with Cursor that you cannot on Lovable. So there's a reputation that Cursor is more for developers and Lovable Bolt is more for designers. But I don't tend to agree. I feel like if I have more power, I take it, So I think Cursor would be my choice in general. But if you are comfortable with Lovable, feel free to. There is no obligation to switch your tools. But I wanted to give you an idea of why we picked these tools. So you cannot access file system, which means if let's say you have one code base, you build one application, and then you want your AI to build something similar, you cannot reference that. Like today, you cannot be like, hey, look at this application, find everything that I've done, and then recreate something like that. That you cannot do on Lovable Bolt, but on Cursor you can. You have lesser control over code. I mean, here in code, you can have all kinds of automation, which you don't have, but very likely you won't be using any of this. But yeah, like for when you go advanced and when you get more comfortable with the tools, you can exploit all of these things. On Cursor, this Cursor is sort of like this new, like tool AI on steroids sort of model, right? The biggest thing about Cursor is you can have multiple threads. Let me show you what I mean by that. So here's Cursor interface. And if you see here, this is the same as your Lovable's UI. So you have your files browser on the left, you have your chat over here on the right. Here, instead of the website where you actually see the website, we don't have anything here where you can open your actual files and see here, but otherwise you don't have the website. The website, to see the actual website, you just have to ask it to start the development server, right? So what that will do is just simply start a server, and that it'll create a link. That link can be opened on your browser. That's what it does. It compiles all the code. It starts, it will run this command. You don't have to remember any of these commands. You're talking to AI, and it'll start the server. And if you see, it gives you a link like this. So if I open it, I can see the actual application in the browser. So this is the only difference in terms of how to access your website on Lovable versus accessing your website on Cursor. This is taking a bit of time, but the other thing I wanted to say is you can have multiple tabs here. So you can have, look at this, you can have up to 3 chats. So you can have your AI work on the front end of the application while it's also working on the back end of the application, while it's also working on another application. You get it? So this is like super power packed tool, which is not on Lovable. Another thing that people are doing these days is to have multiple windows of cursor. So you can like have multiple windows of the same application, and people are running like, I don't know, 20, 30 agents at the same time. So it's crazy that like you can have multiple things working on your application at the same time. And yeah, like the possibilities of this just creates like some endless thing. Yeah, Sriraksha.
I have a question about tokens. So whenever I give a prompt, that is considered as one token, right?
No, it's actually each word is a token. If you say, super base is a token, like this is a token. So what is AI actually doing? It's generating text, right? So when it generates text, that text unit is a token. And that's how they calculate the costs. If it generates like 1 million tokens, what is the cost per million token? It depends on the AI, right? So what these tools will do, it'll try to optimize your token usage so that their costs will be low. So that's just a simple thing for you to understand. But in what context was your question around?
So I was planning to subscribe to Lovable or either of the tools, and they said for 100 tokens there's a price, and then as you increase the tokens, the price gets higher. So
Right.
I was trying to understand like which plan I should go for in order to build this prototype.
Right. So depending on what you ask, it will go generate some code, write some code, and how much code it writes gives you an indication of how many tokens it consumed, right? So if you add 10 features, it created a lot of code for those 10 features, and each of them adds to your token usage, right? So if you have more tokens, by all means, go for it. But go for the next plan, and then once you exhaust it, go for the next one. But here's when you can choose. You can choose if you want Lovable or if you want Cursor. Cursor has a slightly generous token limit. It has a lot of fast ones, and then after the fast one completes, you have unlimited slow ones. So Cursor has a slightly different model. So you can play around with both tools and see based on your usage which ones you're comfortable with. Yeah, Karan.
I just wanted to say for what I built, because I bought the plan, I think it cost like 25 euros or something, and I already used 41 of 100 credits. So it does go quite fast on Lovable, and you have to be a bit selective, I guess. But I think now that I know about these styling hacks, I think that could help quite a lot to save, and maybe also using then ChatGPT to make your prompts maybe a bit better. That would probably also help, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you could just like literally change if you inspect this element. We spoke about inspect element last time, right? So you can go see through the thing that it created as well. In some cases, you can. Okay, hold on. I think maybe. Okay, so it's kind of jumbled over here, but see, it says text left, P3, BG white. It kind of jumbled it, but if you like publish it and then see it in the actual application, you won't find it jumbled because it's trying to have control over these things. Hold on, maybe let me open this. So if you can open this, you can see that width full, right? So if I want to make PL say 20, see, you can see that it quickly changed. Yes, you could save a lot of tokens by just like playing around with this. And then once you're done with it, you can just copy this whole class, put it inside your AI and be like, hey, I just restyled my input field, use this new classes. You could do that. So let me maybe make it a little better style for your. So this says there's a padding right of 3, padding y of 3. So let's make the padding y of 4 maybe. See, the padding just increased. Maybe let's make it 8. There is no. So what happened was when there is no value registered for 8, it just becomes 0. So if you write a number 5, there is nothing for 5 either. Let's try it for 4. But if you want a value for 5, 6, 7, 8, you just have to tell AI. You just be like, hey, I tried PY8, but nothing, like it doesn't have any value. So why don't you add some like more spacing values, spacing variables to my application? That's it. You can say something like that and it'll add more spacing. And this is border white 20. You can say border black 20. See, okay, actually, okay. So what white 20 is basically border white plus 20% opacity. So if you like make border 50, it should change. But sometimes what it does is finally it strips out all the variables that you don't need, that you're not using. And that's why you see very limited ones here. But on your application, you'll see everything. See, you can use rounded XL or rounded 2XL, or 2XL, or you have rounded full. All these properties are available on your Tailwind documentation, right? So yeah, this is basically one way to play around with your element. And once you have something that you're happy with, just double click it, just copy this whole class, go back into your Lovable, and just be like, hey, I change the input fields styling in the home page. Okay, in the home page, use these classes instead. And then I just paste whatever I just copied, right? And it'll automatically go figure out where to change it, and it'll automatically update it. Just have to give it 1 minute, and then we'll check this. Yeah, so this is one way to style it. I'm going to talk about a lot more today, but yeah, while it's working on this, we can keep moving, and then once it's done, I'll come back and show you. So yeah, I wanted to show you the differences between Cursor and Lovable, because you're hitting limits and you're considering purchasing your plan. This is a time where you can decide if you want to stick with Lovable or you want to try Cursor. So I would say give it both a try, see how complicated it feels. I'll send you a video after this on like how to set up Cursor, like on your system. You can take a look at it. If you're comfortable with Cursor, I would say pick Cursor. If you feel like Lovable is what you like, that's fine as well. Yeah. So now some pro tricks, right? How to make, we learned like some basic styling, but we want to take it to the next level. We want some really cool styling, like all those fancy colors and like different interactions that you see on websites. How do we build that? So there are 4 ways you can do it. So one is this, I think you might have all guessed, because you already have been using this. So if you have, let's say, an image. So for example, I have this image and I really like this, say, text, right? So I like this gradient on text. So what I can do is just simply, hold on. You have to check green. So when I open the website, you can see that it has, this is my prompt builder that I'm designing with you, right? So it says good morning with your name. If you log in, it'll show your name. But let's say I want this to be looking similar to this kind of a text. So all I can do is just copy this text, take a screenshot, just go back into Cursor or Lovable, doesn't matter, and just paste this text and just be like, change the good morning text to fit into this style attached image reference. Say it in your own way. That's if you want to be a little more clear, should use a gradient and pick any gradient colors or whatever, right? So you can just add your own specificity. If you want a specific gradient color, you could do that as well, or you can say just pick from the image. That could work as well. So yeah, so then what it'll do is it'll go and find what's happening in the code base, where is this good morning text written, and then it'll go apply that. See, then it said, I found the text. Let me examine this file more closely, and then apply a gradient. So one very good practice of designing with vibe coding is read all of these things, because the more time you spend reading on it, the more comfortable you'll get with understanding what's happening, and that'll give you more powers later. Because if you skip this, so this is basically how you learn by building, because you're actually seeing what it's doing, right? So now you can see, because we learned what Tailwind is, now you can see that the text has been found. Let me apply a beautiful gradient style, right? So since you want to use gradient and pick any color, I'll create a modern eye-catching gradient. And then what it did was it took this text, which was the Tailwind CSS text that was there earlier, and then it replaced with the green one. So it added something. So everything here stays the same, and it added this BG gradient to right from purple to pink, purple via pink to blue, BG clip text transparent, right? So this is what we discussed. We discussed how like Tailwind CSS classes make changes to the styling. So when you ask it, it's exactly taking the image reference and it turns into Tailwind classes that needs to be added, and it adds it for you. And then, yeah, once you accept it and just go back to your application, you can see that the text color has been changed. So you could go and pick out interesting things from other websites, see different styling treatments that have been done. You have lots of, if you go to Refero design, you've got a lot of inspiration here. Like you can go, just browse through some interesting websites that you find here. And then if you have some, see, look at this one, like you can just screenshot this dotted thing and then be like, hey, I really like this dotted thing, make a dotted background, So I would just start in your chat and be like, create a dotted background like this in my application. Right? So then what it'll do is it'll understand, okay, what kind of dotted background you want from that image, and then it'll go just create it for you. So this is like a super easy way to design by just taking screenshots. So if you find something, take a screenshot. It's like your Pinterest mood board, right? Okay, next one. Inspect styles. I think we kind of touched on it, but we touched on how to inspect element in your own thing. But you can actually take this to the next level, right? So you could be like, let's say I'm going to hit my console here on this random Refero website. I really like the logo section here, right? This logo section, I really like it. So what I can do is just inspect, just select this, right? Now it created, if you hover over here, you can see that it created the entire logo section, right? So I can just say, edit as HTML, copy the whole thing, and then go into my thing and say, start a new chat and say, create an interesting logos section in my website that looks like this. And then just copy paste it. That's it. Now what it'll do is it'll know exactly what this is, and it'll go create a very similar thing on your website. Let's go see what it does. Yeah. So while this is doing, let me go back and show you what happened at Lovable. See, now you can see the input field styling change. I know it's not very noticeable, but it's very subtle. But yeah, so what it basically did was, if you go into the code, you can see that, I think, yeah, you can see that it would have just changed the Tailwind CSS. See, it just went here and it just pasted whatever Tailwind CSS that we did. So you can see the red one is the one that was edited and the green one is the one that got replaced with. So yeah, let's go back and see if it did something over here. Yeah, this is still taking some time, but it will fairly accurately get you the same results. And one thing to notice here is that it's using SVGs. So when you see an SVG written here, you know that it's using SVG. SVG is kind of like an image format, which it's like Illustrator versus Photoshop. So on Illustrator, you can zoom in, it's a vector. So SVG is a vector and Photoshop is a raster image. So you know that if it's an SVG, it's actually a good thing because it'll look crisp on all screens. So yeah, rest assured, it'll create this thing, right? So what I would do is, whenever I would find a nice website which has nice examples, I would go take a, bookmark it somewhere. And this bookmarking is going to be a super valuable asset over time, because the best vibe coders will be the best bookmarkers. That's quite literally how it's going to become. So if you have a great collection of bookmarks, you're going to be the best vibe coder out there, hands full stop. So for example, right, the same inspect element example. So I can just go here, select this. Let me delete all of this. I just want the background, right? So I'm going to delete all of this and just keep the background. So hold on. Yeah, I deleted this too. And now I have this background. So I can just go here, just edit as HTML, copy it, and just go back to my application and just say, hey, I want a nice, see, this is the thing, right? How do you even describe a background like this? It's very difficult to describe. Look how amazing it looks, right? So instead of having to describe it, you could just go, I want a nice background like this in my application, whatever, right? And just put the background. And then it'll understand like what am I actually talking about, right? No, actually this is not the one. Hold on. Yeah. So for this, I don't think there's enough context here for it to get it. I would use an image. So I would just put an image and then say, hey, create a background like that in my application, and that will do it for you. Yeah. So you can choose which approach you want to take. You want to go inspect the styles, or you want to go in just provide an image. That's up to you. If one doesn't work, try the other, and that will help you get those results. Okay, this is where it's getting a lot more interesting, right? So you don't have to manually style a lot of these things. There are websites where these things come for you. For example, there's a website called 21. Hold on just 1 second. I'll give you a list of all websites like this that you can use. So what this does is it has all these collection of really cool effects that you can just copy paste. See, look at this, like it's an animated hero, right? You just have to copy the prompt, put it in your cursor or Lovable, and just get it. That's it. Create the first version that already is here and go modify it, right? So you can use this cover image and just go change the text. That's it. You have so many very interesting effects. Look at this. You just copy paste it, put it in your Lovable, and you have it. This is how simple it is to get a really cool, smooth doc in your website. That's such a cool effect, right? Look at this. So this is exactly how I did my website. So if you've seen my website, so like these things, you see these effects, it was all from another website that a similar code that I got, and I just used it in this context. And I said, I copied prompt, put it here, and I said, look, create a similar effect behind this thing. And yeah, even this one, right? Oh, sorry. Even this one, you see this like little light that comes up here. That's also the same thing. I created the dotted line first using a screenshot, like you saw, and then I said, now when I hover, I want this color to be on this thing. So and then I gradually built upon it. So yeah, you could do some very cool things with just simply like knowing what to copy, right? And now like the one moral question that I want to like maybe touch on is like, where is the room for innovation here if you're just copying, right? I think you can innovate above what you copy. So instead of being like, oh no, I cannot, I have to do something from scratch, this is a far better approach, because you take what's already working, which is nice, and then add your own innovation on top of it. That's far better than, a lot of people just create very simple stuff, which is like everything else. But today, now, because building cool stuff is so easy, simple stuff has no value anymore. So taste is the new thing in design, right? So you need to have a lot more creative, interesting things. So try to see how you can use this and then make something cool on top of it. Yeah, so that's the third way to design. And the final way is actually yesterday's news that Figma launched a new feature called MCP. So what is MCP, right? So MCP is called as a model context protocol. So when you go to your browser and you say HTTP, right? What does this HTTP mean? It means hypertext transfer protocol. So it's a medium of communication between websites. When you go type google.com, you're saying, through this protocol, I want all the files of google.com to be loaded on my browser. That's exactly what you're saying. So similar to HTTP, MCP is the same thing. but you're not putting it on the browser. Cursor or Lovable does not have MCP, by the way. Yeah, so just for you to know, only Cursor has MCP and Windsurf has MCP, because for MCP to work, it needs to be an application. It cannot be on the browser. So when you have MCP, what you can do is literally go into Figma and just, let's say I have this card, right? And I made a design. I can just simply copy Command L, which will just copy that link to that card, right? And then I can go into my cursor and just say, let me open a new one and create a new page and design this card or build this card. And then just put the link to the card. That's it. It'll use the MCP protocol, go understand, see, it's calling an MCP tool, and the tool it's calling is called get Figma data. And what's that giving back? It's giving back all this metadata about what we just built. So it gives a thumbnail URL, it gives all this ID, frame details, all this information is passed from Figma to your cursor through this protocol. And literally it'll go recreate this entire thing like within less than a minute, right? So yeah, just give it some time to see what it creates, because it's just literally going and referencing this and then recreating it. Any questions so far? Yeah, Sil.
Ashwin, did you not have a Figma to cursor plugin?
Yes, I did, but MCP came out after, but MCP is a way better solution. So I think, yeah, that plugin is useful for like little things. What's actually doing is that plugin just gives this information, right? That plugin just copies this information manually and then puts it here. But using MCP, I don't have to copy paste. It talks to Figma. So once MCP rolled out, that plugin became like, yeah, they killed my plugin, basically.
If you make any changes on that card component in Figma, then does it automatically get updated here?
No, it won't. It's
Okay.
only a one-way communication. So when you ask cursor, it'll go talk to Figma and it'll come, right? So if let's say you ask on your cursor to go check if there are any changes on your Figma, then it can do that. So what it would need context of what is already there. Then it'll pull from Figma on what was new, and it'll compare and it'll make those changes. All of that AI can do for you, but you have to remember that it's one-way request. Yeah, correct.
But like, what is the main use case for this MCP for Figma? Because if you can make already everything in Cursor in a way, is it for teams that already have like their whole design system in Figma, or? Yeah.
Great question. So you see, like, if you're comfortable designing on Figma and you have like full pages that you want to build in one go, MCP is better, because you don't have to go component by component. It'll save you a lot of time, right? But these other things that we've been doing, that's slightly, you have to go pick individual elements and then design it in Cursor, wait for the AI to complete. And it's just your comfort, which if you have a lot of things to do at once, MCP would be the best approach, in my opinion. If you have little things to improve, you could use the other options. Just go copy code. If you have new concepts to create, use the code option from all of these options. So yeah, use the code option if you want to create something new, like super interesting that has never been created before. You wanna take one of those fancy animations and modify it, I would use code. If you wanna use something from another website that you like, I would use inspect styles that we just spoke about. Pictures for little tweaks on your website, MCP for full pages, complete pages. That's how I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, Nicole.
Two questions. First, can you repeat what's the code about? And the second question is, when you use MCP with Cursor, and are the code is following the ones that we have defined within the design systems, or is it something they just created using Tailwind, for example? I don't know which framework is following.
It's a very good question. So I think, so what happens is you will have to see AI hallucinates. Without clear instructions, it would assume something. So by default, it may assume that it needs to recreate something from scratch. But if in the prompt, I'm answering your second question first, and then I'll go into code. Yeah. But if in the prompt you mention that after you pull this from Figma, recreate it using my design system, and you make that very clear in your prompt, it'll do that, right? So you have to, this is why you understand what's happening. So you know exactly when you ask the right thing. Because if you don't ask, it'll assume the wrong thing. It might do the right thing at sometimes, but there's a very good chance it might not use your design system. So it's better when you're using MCP, in the prompt itself, you can be like, hey, recreate my Figma design. Here's the link to the Figma design, but use my design system. Don't create new components unless needed. If you find a component in my system, please reuse that. You know, if you specify that in your prompt, it's going to make sure it's done correctly. Does that answer your question, Nicole?
Yes. So where every command I need to use to specify that, or I have a system prompt settings inside Cursor that I can just govern everything first.
Yes, you can. You within Cursor in settings, you have, if you go to Cursor settings, let me open this. You have certain instructions that you can give that applies across, hold on, rules. See, I have created all these rules, like I'm using this environment. Alert the user when nearing the context window limit. Request the user, provide project code documentation. Yeah, so it's basically, you have a lot of these rules that you can write, and it'll apply across everything. But you have to understand that the rules apply across everything that you do. So when you're building a new feature, you might have a, okay, sorry, when you're just styling a feature, you might want a rule that says don't add new features, right? So you might want to say something like, don't break what's already working, just style things, because AI could hallucinate and it could just do things. So now for you to specify this, if you put it here, then it's a problem, because when it's trying to build new features also, it has a conflicting instruction that says, don't add new features, don't break my application, right? So sometimes you need to break your application to build new features. So you need to understand that what applies at a global level rule and what applies at a file level rule is a different thing. So that's why I created the prompt builder for you. The prompt builder does exactly that, right? So what it does is it just creates all these rules for you, and it, hold on, prompt builder. Let me open it up. Localhost 3000. Right? So the prompt builder gives you adds all those instructions on top of your text, and then it copies the entire thing. That's basically what the prompt builder does to address this problem. So you don't have to type all the rules every time. You create your own prompt builder, and then every time you use a specific function, just let it copy all that text. That's the reason I made that for you. Okay, wait, let me see. There's some issue here. What's happening? So it's running in multiple instances. That's why. npm run there. See, I'm doing it manually, but you don't have to. You can just tell AI and it'll do it for you. Oops, something is broken. Yeah, there you go. So if you see for research, now let's look at improve style app. See, look at what prompt I wrote here. I wrote, you're a styling assistant for my applications. Follow these rules strictly. Scan my code base to identify the styling approach that I use. Locate, let me copy this, needs some functionality. And then let me open my notes so I can just show you the whole prompt. Oh, I can't zoom in here. Okay, my prompts. In my application. I saw that dotted somewhere. Do you see that dotted it created in the background? It's over here that we created. So if you see the prompt, you can see it here. You're a styling assistant. If you can see it clearly. Yeah, you're a styling assistant for my application. Follow these rules. Scan my code base and understanding the styling approach. Like I'm saying, look at exactly what you said, Nicole, to understand what we are already doing before you create something new. Locate my design system, typically in components UI folder or similar folders. Identify existing design tokens, and then apply styles at component level when components are being used. Preserve all existing functionality. See, these things, it's hard to remember to type all of this each time, right? So you could, when you're doing styling operations, you could use this rules. When you're doing feature building operations, you could use a different set of rules. Basically, that's how it works. So within Cursor, let's say if you open the prompt builder, second. So within the prompt builder, if I go say style my app, and then I say make my background dotted, right? Something like that. So I copy this prompt, and then I go into Cursor, and once I create a new chat, I would go paste it, right? So after I've pasted it, it'll go add the background. And for the next consecutive task, I don't have to go copy this prompt each time. Because in the same chat, it will keep this context. So unless you start a new chat, it will retain the same context. Now, this is a slight different issue. This is only possible on Cursor, because on Lovable, what it does is the context is very random. So which means that as you keep adding things to your left, it gets mixed up. So it might use context from here, or it might just completely lose context. We don't know what the inner working of it is, but you have more granular control of how much context you want your chat conversation to have on Cursor, which you don't have on Lovable. Because Lovable just gives you, it has only one chat. There's no multiple chats that you can create on Lovable yet. Maybe they might come up with it later. But for now, here you could so now because you gave this context, next time you say add another, gradient, you can just do that. You don't have to, go copy this again and do it again, because all this instruction that you gave is in this chat context. Does that make sense?
So the context window will be kept within individual chat, or is it within the whole project?
It'll be within individual chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So
if I open a new chat window, I have to redefine again.
Exactly. So for a new chat, let's say I would use a chat just for styling. Then I would create a new chat and use it just for building new things. And then I would use another chat and just use it for database stuff. So when we start incrementally building things, we will, for whatever we are creating, we will accordingly give it context, right? So that for that task that we're doing, it has the right context for it to know, and it does all the operations within that context.
Okay, got it. What was the core part you were?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me explain this and I'll come to you, Sumira. Just one second. So code part is basically you using what was already built in code in your application. So 21 dev is an example. There are many examples like this. So for example, you see, these are things that are already built in code by other people, and it's available for free. And it's a community one. You can also build and publish things here. So look at this. Like, these are some pretty cool animation stuff that would take you a long time to build. You can just reuse it. Just copy, put it in your Cursor chat and ask it to build it. And then you can tweak it, right? You copy, paste it, and then be like, hey, I want this set of images. Or I want, instead of it going back, let it flip once and go back. Like, you can do whatever you want to an existing coded component. Make sense?
Oh, okay. So this is a website, 21.
Yes, exactly. See, you have all this cool 3D stuff. You could just pretty much just copy prompt and use it, like how easy it is to build cool stuff.
Like website address again.
It's called 21.dev, but there are several. There is Acernity UI. That's another website. I can say I'll put a link to all the websites I know of in school, so you can just go look around. There's also Magic UI.design. This also has a lot of things. So let me go to components. You can see like tweet cards. You have avatar circles. You look at that. You can use all of these. So when there is no copy prompt option here, that's completely fine. Just go to code, just copy all the code, copy this code. It's giving you basically the instructions, right? Just copy the whole thing, put it in cursor. It's fine, it'll work. And look at this animated progress, circular progress bar. It's got like like a lot of cool stuff. Like you never have to look at this like zoom feature. If you're using like, a map-based thing, this could be really cool as well. Animated beams. See, these are like the ones that are used in landing pages. Super easy to add. Magic card. Yeah. So this is how you like quickly use what is already existing. See, make a website look 10x. I don't know what this is. Maybe it's not loading. Even this one has like very cool, and they're all free and open source. That's the best part, like they don't charge you anything for using it, and it's so easy to replicate it. So if you can see, I can show you exactly what I used in my Aurora background. I think this is the one I used in my website. So basically just copy, paste it, and then you'll get it. The website is a bit slow. It's not loading. But yeah, I'll send you all of these links. Feel free to take a look at it. And what I would do if I were you is find a lot of interesting things from here that you can copy and go put it in your application and see how you can style it better, right? You have all these 4 ways to style your application. I would try all of them. Try making smaller tweaks with pictures. If you find another website with something cool, steal it. If you find one of these interactions from these websites, replicate it. MCP optional if you want to work on Figma and then bring it. It's up to you, but I mean, I don't really see the necessity for using MCP. I built my entire site with just these 3. This is optional. It's great. But yeah, I mean, if you have Figma designs already, but one caveat is that on Figma, you should have clearly defined frames. If you don't define frames clearly, see auto layout. The auto layouts has to be clear. Otherwise, it'll break on this one. So you need to have your Figma clean, neatly set up. Yes, Sumita.
Just thinking more forward, do you still think that design system has its meaning to exist?
Oh, wow. Design systems is actually what we are using here. No? Like we are using the design system within code right now. So if you see inside components, all of this is design system.
Like company specific or product specific design system. That's what I meant.
What you might want to do is take your design system, the link to your design system, put it inside Cursor or Lovable, and ask it to rebuild the same design system in code. That's completely possible. So then what you would do is incrementally build your entire design system within Cursor as code components. And then every time you ask it to build a feature from Figma, you would be like, hey, when you build this feature, don't create anything from scratch. Refer to the design system that exists in code already and recreate it with that. So you like a 2-step process instead of it directly. So you cannot rely it to go look at your design and then check if it has a design system and then go find. In the future, it could do that when AI gets smarter, but for now, you'll have to bring your design systems in code first and write an instruction to say, when you create this, always refer to my design system. And that's what is in the prompt builder right now within Style.
So even with MCP, it's not possible. Just
yeah. As of now, as of today, yeah, you still need to.
Okay. Thanks.
Cool. Sure. Yeah, Sumedha.
I just wanted to ask, like we have a knowledge section in the Lovable. So in case we want to, there we can add everything related to the styling prompt that you just showed, and it will remember it across all, because you said that it might get mixed up and in Cursor it's easier. So is it better to keep, and what things can we add in the knowledge that are consistent throughout the styling? We want it to be consistent throughout our application.
Yeah, so see, you're assigning certain roles. That's what the prompt builder does. You're assigning a role saying your task now is to just style my application. Don't break it, right? So you're clearly, let's say you have a company, you have a team, you're hiring a front-end engineer who's just responsible for styling things, right? So that's exactly what you're doing. So you can go on Lovable and be like, you are responsible for styling my application without breaking any features. Once you assign this role, it'll stick to the role, right? So everything that you do after this, it will by default assume this role is in the context, right? And once you change the role, the new role will now apply. Okay, so it's all in the same chat. You can create a new role, and then it will follow that new role from now on, right? So you could, what happens to the oldest, like the input that you gave, that we don't know. So sometimes it might just chuck it, that depends on how Lovable is configured internally. They might be like, if it's more than 20 chats early, just leave it. Don't even store that in your prompt. That could have been Lovable's way of handling things. We don't know. I have not tested it, but on Cursor, it gives you more granularity because you can have like individual chats for each role. On Lovable, you're putting it all in one thread. So it decides how to work with your thing,
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah, I think that's like the one main thing. And finally, I wanted to talk about fonts. So how are fonts embedded in your app, right? Similar to images, what we spoke earlier, fonts are either stored locally as WOFF file, or there is like certain file formats. You can ask the chat itself, are my fonts stored locally or pulled from CDN? A CDN refers to a content delivery network. It's how you saw images served from a URL. That's delivered through a content delivery network, and that's why you have a URL. Same way you can deliver fonts. So anything can be delivered through a CDN. You can deliver scripts through CDN. So what we are doing is trying to understand where is my fonts in my application. So you can decide that if it's served from an external source like Google Fonts, you can just say that, look, use a different Google font. It's as simple as that. See, looking at your current project file, I see that you're using default system fonts that come with Tailwind CSS. There is no custom fonts being loaded from CDN or stored locally in your project. So right now, it's just using the system browser's system font, right? The default Tailwind CSS font, which typically falls back to system fonts like Apple system, right? No Google fonts are either external, no local fonts are stored. So if you want to add another font, I would say I want to include Google fonts using CDN in my application. And then what you can do is just say use enter or whatever, right? Like name of the font or Montserrat. And it'll automatically create the code to import this Google font, and it'll automatically import the Montserrat font all from the link, and then it'll update in your application. As simple as that. So, I mean, even if you just went to the chat and said, replace my font to Montserrat, it'll still do it. But I just want to be a little more clearer here in terms of what's happening, because let's say at some point you have multiple fonts. You could have one font delivered through CDN and one font stored locally. And then what happens is your CDN, for some reason, breaks and your font is not being delivered. Your one font may break, and then you'll be like, hey, why are my fonts not loading, right? So that you need to understand that fonts are either served from a link or they're stored locally. So now what it did was it added the Google Fonts using CDN, Content Delivery Network, to your application with Montserrat font, right? And you can see the font also changed. Added Google Fonts to your application with Montserrat. The font is now loaded from Google CDN and configured in Tailwind CSS. You can use it in your components with font Montserrat class, or it will be used by default, since I've also said as default sans serif font. Is it clear so far? Is the last part confusing?
I have license to font that my company uses, for example, then I could add the folder here and then that would work, or?
Yes. So what you do is you cannot do this on Lovable free plan. I think you need to get a paid plan to be able to use the code editor. On Cursor, it's free up to a certain point. So what you could do is just create a folder here called fonts, bring all your font files here, and then go tell your Lovable, hey, I want to use fonts from local directory. I've stored my fonts in this folder. Please use that. please replace like all headings with this font, all body text with this font. You can specify what you want to be changed. So that's how you can use either locally or through a CDN. CDN is the best because what happens is when you use something like Google Font CDN, there you go. So it usually is served from a URL, right? And that URL, it's Google servers have a very high uptime. Uptime means like the time, the speed at which you get your fonts delivered to your website, and also like the time when Google servers is not facing a lot of load, and because it's not crashing, so it will without fail give you the font. So what happens is, if you've seen on your phone, sometimes what happens is when you first open an application, the font starts with something else, and then there's a switch. It happens, right? First the fonts load, and then there's a switch that happens. And this happens because of this reason. Because your content loads, then by the time your content is loading, it's bringing the font from an external service. And once that font is loaded, it updates the font in your website. So that's why you see that glitch sometimes when you go on certain websites. The font that initial loads is different from the font that loads after 3 or 4 seconds, because of the CDN thing. Yeah, that was just the main skills I wanted to touch on today. Yeah, we're almost at 90 minutes. So assignment, right? Simple, like whatever you learned today with each technique, see how you can style your application, right? Try to style using code, try to style using images, try everything and see which ones you feel more comfortable with and which ones are getting you better results. So now you'll start to have an idea of what is your preferred method for styling, and that becomes your style kit. And yeah, the second one is optional, but again, there's a learning curve, but there's several benefits on the other side of it. So if you want to try Cursor, this is your chance to do so. I'll send you a video on how to install Cursor. There's a little bit of, it's a little more technical than, Lovable. So that's why it might be a bit overwhelming at first, but if you can get around it, it's pretty easy. And finally, document any issues you encounter, of course, right? If you try to understand from the lens of the foundation, right? If something breaks, why does it break? You can now understand if the Tailwind classes are not defined properly. If the style itself, if the whole page styles break, it means there is an issue with the whole CSS file being loaded, right? So you can try and guess what's happening and see if you can interact with AI and verify that. Be like, hey, is this what's happening? Is this why it's breaking? Can you explain? Could this be the reason? These are great ways to talk to AI, because AI doesn't always make the accurate guess. Sometimes when you give, when you prompt it with maybe, could this be the issue? It picks it up and it goes checks it, and so more often you end up being more right than AI. So yeah, so if you understand the foundations, things get very easy. Okay, some tips. Always use a reference. Don't try to create anything from scratch, like from Figma. Try to use as much reference as possible, because it'll help you style faster. And if you want to innovate on top of it. Styling is 10x better when you have a good collection of inspiration. This is the biggest thing that you have to start doing today. That start bookmarking all the cool things you find online, right? This will be your biggest asset in a month, in 2 months. When you join a company, and the only thing the difference between someone who does amazing job and someone who does average job is the number of bookmarks this person has. It's come down to that right now because the skill itself is just building with AI. So that's anyone can do. So the only thing that matters now is how many nice collection of bookmarks you have, which you can reuse. Yes, Sumedha.
I just wanted to know, where do you document your inspirations or bookmark, Notion, or what is your go-to, and how do you think is the best way to keep it most organized, and so that whenever if you want to go for components, you can easily have a list and you can just think, or how do you think it's the best way to do it?
Yeah, so I can suggest the para method for you. This is really amazing. Para method, Tiago, Forte. It's a system of organizing information that That's super effective, super effective. It's so you divide stuff into your entire digital archive into these 4 buckets. You put it in either projects. Projects are things that you're working on right now. Areas are like general things like health, marketing, human resources, and all that. Resources are like very specific things. For example, UI UX is this thing that you mentioned about code components is a resource, right? And then archives are things, projects that are not valid anymore. You just move to archives. It's a great segregation and organizational method. It's awesome. Like I have all my tools in the same organization method, and it really helps me. I wouldn't know what to do without it. Like really, it's really super helpful.
Sure. Thank you. I will go through it and yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And finally, okay, document your error and paste it in school. I keep repeating the reason for documentation is because the more that you try to document, the more you actually understand what's happening. And the chances of you not facing the same error next time is better now because you know what prompt to add to the next prompt, So if you have something that you documented from before, you know that if you add that into your next prompt for clarity, you're going to get better results. So as you get better and better, you have all this like knowledge that you can use into creating faster, better iterations. That's where it'll really help you. And it'll also help you understand and learn better, right? Imitate, then innovate. This is like a nice quote from this guy called David Perel. It says the exact same thing, like all the best artists, like a lot of people do this. Like they take what's working and then they innovate on top of it instead of innovating from scratch. Yeah, so this will really speed up your process. Okay, that's a wrap for today. In the next week, we will look at interactive components. We're going to look at what React components are. We'll understand, how React components work within this whole component environment. We'll learn about how packages, like what are packages, how do you use similar packages created by others into your application. It's a little more advanced than we've learned so far, but I want to understand, was today's too technical, or did you find this easy to follow? Yeah?
It was good.
Okay. Yeah. Be easy to follow.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, next week we will meet same time, and and if there's anything, I'll send you. Okay, thanks for the links, Sriraksha. I'll put all the links like last time into school, including all these links to websites where you can copy from. And yeah, just go try style something and put it on school. And I hope to see what you all make. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and see you later. Bye.
I do have a question. Do you have?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. So in Cursor, the last time in the last week we talked about one-shot prompting, right? Rather than making something and then fixing changes, you restore and then you keep doing it until you get it right in the first try. So I've been doing that and things have been good, but I did forget about the new chat feature, right? So I've built new stuff on the same chat as the one where I was styling, and so there are some issues where, for example, there's a specific bug that I haven't been able to figure out. There's just I've tried like prompting 30 times. So would going to a new chat help, like segregating things into building new features versus styling? Is that something that I should be doing from now on? Or?
Yes, please start using new chat for a specific type of operation. So you would use one chat for styling, one chat for adding one functionality, one chat for one purpose. Because when you use one chat for one purpose and you use the prompt template, it retains the context and it makes sure your results are focused on that context, right? So it always gives you better results. So it was too much to explain in the previous call, but yeah, I think one chat per purpose is a great framework to look at it like.
Okay, yeah, it is mixed up though right now, so there's nothing I can do about it.
Don't worry. It's fine. Okay. Like we all start there. I started off there and I tried a few things and started getting better results here. And yeah, it's experimentation.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions? Last one? No. Okay, awesome. Then see you next week. Bye.